You know that very specific, almost universal feeling that hits you right at the end of the day.
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Right. Like you fought through traffic, you've navigated all the office politics, and you finally walk up to your front door, you put the key in the lock, and you take this deep, bracing breath.
Yeah, the threshold breath.
Exactly. And culturally, we are told that's supposed to be the moment you finally relax. But if we're being completely honest, for so many of us, that deep breath isn't about unwinding at all.
No, not really.
It's actually about gathering your strength and like bracing yourself around you.
It is a bracing breath. Absolutely. It's this subconscious gathering of emotional armor before you cross your own threshold. And it creates this massive contradiction when you compare it to what we're, universally taught a home is meant to be.
Right.
We are so conditioned to view the home as the ultimate sanctuary, like the one place where we can finally retreat from the relentless demands of the outside world.
But today, we are doing a deep dive into a framework that completely dismantles that romanticized view of the sanctuary.
It really does tear it down.
Yeah, it's fascinating. We are unpacking a really thought-provoking lecture transcript recorded on May 15th, 2026 in Cheonan, South Korea. And the whole discussion pivots around a profoundly relevant question asked during what is celebrated as Family Month over there.
Which is the perfect timing for this kind of question.
Exactly. An audience member basically points out that the traditional blood-based definition of family is kind of fracturing right before our eyes. We're seeing this massive surge in single-person households, share houses, and communities built on choice rather than genetics.
Yeah, the demographics are just undeniable at this point.
So the question posed to the speaker was, in a rapidly modernizing society, where does the actual boundary of a family begin and end?
And the response provided in this material is, it's a complete paradigm shift.
Yeah.
Because instead of just trying to stretch the old traditional definition to somehow comfortably fit modern living arrangements, it does something else entirely.
It goes way deeper.
It does. The framework connects our very personal, behind closed doors domestic struggles to the broader trajectory of human evolution and, well, societal responsibility. It really demands a radical rethinking of how human beings are supposed to live together.
Okay, let's get right into the critique of the modern biological household, because the perspective here is just incredibly blunt.
Oh, it doesn't hold back at all.
Not even a little. We traditionally define a family as a small, tight-knit biological group, but the argument made in this lecture is that modern homes are fundamentally failing at their core purpose.
Failing on a structural level, yeah.
Yeah.
The whole romanticized notion of domestic bliss is entirely stripped away here. The speaker observes that for a vast number of people, the home has devolved into essentially a sleeping quarter.
Right.
It's just a physical structure where people go when the sun goes down, basically because they have nowhere else to be.
Think about the behavioral descriptions used to illustrate this in the text. The imagery is so vivid and honestly a little uncomfortable because it's so recognizable to a lot of people.
Yeah, it hits very close to home, pun intended.
Seriously. It describes people coming home and just slamming doors, like actively avoiding real dialogue with the people they supposedly love the most. And when communication does happen, it's rarely supportive.
No, it's usually the opposite.
The phrase used in the translation is red-eyed interactions. These glaring defensive arguments where family members immediately snap at each other. Things like, why are you always like this? Or why did you do it that way?
Which brings up a really fascinating psychological flip that the source highlights. In our modern society, leaving the house to go out into the demanding, chaotic world often feels like clocking out of a stressful situation.
Wow. Yeah.
Right. Meanwhile, returning home to your supposed sanctuary feels exactly like clocking into a highly demanding, completely unrewarding job. The entire dynamic is backwards.
You're going to the one place designated for stress release, and instead you're walking into an environment where a completely different, often more intense type of stress begins.
Exactly.
I was trying to conceptualize how this happens, and it really feels to me like the modern biological household often functions like a poorly managed hotel.
Oh, poorly managed hotel. I like that.
Right, like you have all these guests, your family members living under one roof,
Wow.
but everyone is entirely siloed in their own rooms. They share resources, they might bump into each other in the hallway or the kitchen, but they are fundamentally operating as separate individuals.
Individuals who are easily irritated by the mere presence of the other guests.
Yes. If the Wi-Fi drops or, someone leaves a mess in the shared space, it triggers an immediate conflict. There's no shared mission. It is just physical proximity.
Just sharing a mailing address, basically.
Exactly. So if we accept this critique, what does this all mean for the actual purpose of a home? Like, if it's not just a storage facility for our belongings and our bodies, what is the mechanism that makes a house a family?
The mechanism, according to this framework, is consultation.
Consultation, okay.
Yeah. The true function of a home must be as a place of deep, constructive discussion. What's fascinating here is that the language implies a rigorous conferring with one another to resolve issues.
So not just chatting about the weather.
No, real problem-solving discussion.
Yeah.
If you are crossing your threshold and your primary instinct is to just shut your mouth, to avoid conflict, to tiptoe around the moods of the people you live with, then the argument is that the environment has ceased to be a family altogether.
Wow. It's just become a place of convenience.
Right. A true family requires an atmosphere where friction can be smoothly and openly processed. Without that mechanism of safe consultation, the biological label attached to the group is essentially meaningless.
Okay, so if our immediate biological homes are increasingly failing to provide that space for true discussion, where are we supposed to look?
Well, this is where the transcript takes a very sharp, very provocative turn.
It really does. The argument shifts from the micro-level dysfunction of the household to a massive macro-level perspective on human progress. The claim is that our obsession with the small family, this tiny biological unit, is inherently flawed because no family grows or succeeds in a vacuum.
It's a complete sociological zoom out.
Yeah.
The assertion here is that a single family, or even a single brilliant intellectual, cannot possibly grow and thrive without utilizing the accumulated energy, knowledge, and sacrifices of all humanity.
All of humanity, that's huge.
It is. The lecture argues that the very bedrock of our progress knowledge itself cannot be produced or sustained without this massive collective global effort.
Now, I have to push back here a little bit to represent the listener because this is a profoundly challenging concept, especially, for a Western audience steeped in the ideals of individualism.
Oh, absolutely. Clashes directly with that.
Like, if you are listening to this on your commute right now, you might be thinking, hold on a second. I am the one who worked the 80-hour weeks to get my promotion. I paid off my student loans. I sacrificed to save for the down payment on the house that provides for my kid.
Right, the self-made narrative.
Exactly. We are deeply, deeply conditioned to credit our own individual agency and hard work for our family's security. So how does this text justify stripping away that individual credit and assigning it to the rest of humanity?
It's a crucial tension to explore.
Yeah.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the framework isn't necessarily saying you didn't work hard,
Okay.
but it is challenging the idea that your hard work happened in isolation. It asks us to examine the invisible scaffolding of society.
The invisible scaffolding.
Yeah.
Reset.
To give a concrete example, the material references the rapid economic growth and prosperity of South Korea.
Yeah.
The argument is that this growth wasn't simply the result of individual families just suddenly deciding to work harder. It was possible because the accumulated mass or volume of global human society provided the environment for that growth.
So meaning the infrastructure, the technology, the global trade networks, all of that.
Exactly. Think about the specific mechanism of your own success, that complex knowledge you used to secure your promotion. You didn't invent it.
Right. I read it in a book someone else wrote.
Exactly. It was built on centuries of human trial, error, and scientific sacrifice. The relatively stable economic system that allows your mortgage to exist. It functions because of the daily labor, compliance, and trust of millions of strangers globally. You are utilizing a vast pre-existing social technology.
I see. So it's demanding a radical shift in where we direct our gratitude. But I mean, the language used in the source material to describe people who focus only on their nuclear family is pretty intense.
It is very intense. The perspective presented is that remaining hyper-focused on protecting and enriching only your tiny biological family unit while completely ignoring the societal scaffolding that made your life possible is practically arrogant.
Arrogant.
Yeah. The text argues that you are essentially taking the massive dividends of a global human investment and hoarding them within a tiny, often dysfunctional household.
Just keeping it all behind that locked front door.
Right. By refusing to acknowledge the collective effort, you're denying the fundamental reality of how your standard of living was achieved in the first place.
It's a highly provocative collectivist stance. And honestly, Whether you fully agree with that perspective or you want to furiously defend your individual agency, you have to admit it forces you to look at your daily commute differently.
It really does.
Like all those people in traffic with you, they are part of that scaffolding. Which brings us to the next logical leap in this material. If we owe our prosperity to the broader society, and if our biological homes are failing as places of genuine discussion, the conclusion drawn here is that society itself must functionally become our new family.
That is the inevitable destination of this logic.
Hmm.
The speaker observes that people are increasingly finding their actual discussion partners, their true sense of community and support, in external social gatherings rather than in their own living rooms.
Yeah, the lecture points out that because it was recorded in May, which is Family Month in Korea, there's a heightened awareness of all these social gatherings, community events, and interest groups happening outside the home.
Which perfectly illustrates the point.
Right. And the suggestion is that because people are actually engaging in that vital mechanism of consultation, talking, sharing, and actively connecting at these external events, those external circles are functionally stepping into the role of the traditional family.
If we accept the premise that a family is defined by mutual support and open consultation rather than shared genetics, then your tree family might very well be the colleagues you collaborate with.
Or the community members you organize with.
Exactly. Or the interest groups you engage with out in the public sphere. But this introduces a massive logistical and emotional problem.
Oh, for sure.
How do you actually care for a family that consists of an entire society?
That sounds exhausting.
It does.
Yeah.
To address this, the material introduces a really pivotal concept, the social parent.
I am so fascinated by this concept of the social parent. The material describes their role as actively researching, untangling, and fixing the things that have gone wrong in society.
Right.
But what does that actually look like? If I'm the listener right now, how do I know if I'm supposed to be a social parent? Is this just a philosophical rebrand of volunteering at a soup kitchen or like picking up litter in the park?
This raises an important question about how we view strangers because it goes much deeper than standard volunteerism.
Okay, how so?
Well, volunteering is often treating a symptom, right? Social parenting is about diagnosing and treating the disease. It's a fundamental cognitive shift in how we view the public sphere. Think about the specific psychological state of a parent. When your own biological child is struggling, you don't just complain about them to your neighbors. You don't just slap a Band-Aid on a recurring wound. You actively research the problem. You try to understand the root cause. You take proactive, relentless ownership of finding a solution.
You take personal responsibility for the mess, basically.
Precisely. Becoming a social parent means taking that exact same mechanism of parental responsibility, the patience, the research, the proactive problem solving, and applying it to the wider community.
That's a huge shift in perspective.
It is. The material notes that everyday citizens must step up and assume this role. It specifically references the upcoming month of June, which is the month of patriots and veterans in South Korea, a time traditionally dedicated to honoring those who sacrificed for the nation.
Right, and the suggestion in the lecture is that rather than just looking backward with gratitude, citizens should use that time to actively study and organize solutions for the current societal family.
Yes, it is a call for rigorous intellectual civic engagement. A social parent observes a failing education system or rising isolation in their neighborhood, and instead of just saying, well, the government should fix this, they study the tangled threads of the issue.
They don't just wait for someone else to do it.
Exactly. They gather with their societal family to consult and figure out how to weave those threads back together. They take ownership.
But practically speaking, that requires a monumental psychological leap.
Oh, undoubtedly.
I mean, to look at the person arguing aggressively on the internet or the person cutting you off in traffic and to genuinely view them as a member of your family that requires your patience and parental care.
It's hard.
It goes against every instinct we have for self-preservation. And the source material actually addresses this hurdle directly, which I appreciate.
It does, yes.
It states that to successfully act as a social parent, we have to undergo a deliberate personal evolution. We have to transition from being what it calls a petty person to becoming a great person.
This is where the sociological framework roots itself deeply in traditional philosophy. The material brings up the concept of Hongik-ingen.
Hongik-ingen, right.
Yeah, it's an ancient Korean ideal that loosely translates to individuals who are meant to broadly benefit all of humanity. It's an ethos of altruistic, expansive leadership.
The contrast used here is brilliant. It contrasts that Hongik-ingen ideal with the petty person. And the imagery used is of someone who only stares at their own feet.
Just looking straight down.
Exactly. A petty person is entirely consumed by the micro. They obsess over small, immediate problems, tiny interpersonal squabbles, and the absolute narrowest confines of their own biological family unit.
Because when you stare at your feet, your field of vision is entirely restricted to your immediate ego and your immediate threats. You literally can't see anything else.
Right.
Contrast that with the great person. A great person naturally operates with a massive field of vision. They look at the horizon. They do not see their family as ending at their property line.
They see it expanding.
Yes, expanding to encompass the entire nation and eventually humanity itself. The material reminds the audience of a phrase they were likely taught as children over there: to contribute to the co-prosperity of mankind.
Which sounds so grand.
It does, but the argument is that this isn't just a nice decorative slogan. It is intended to be a literal operational directive for how a human being should navigate the world.
Let's make this concrete, because the practical application of this philosophy is where the real mechanism of change happens. The claim is that attempting to solve your small, daily household problems using a petty mindset actually makes those small problems impossible to resolve.
It locks them in place.
Yeah. Like, think about a problem you're obsessing over right now. Let's say you're having a bitter, recurring argument with your spouse about something trivial like how the dishwasher is loaded or whose turn it is to take out the recycling.
Classic domestic dispute.
Right. If you are entirely focused on that tiny injustice, you will just spin your wheels forever. So how does thinking about the co-prosperity of mankind actually help me load the dishwasher without screaming?
That is the million-dollar question. And it comes down to the mechanics of human psychology and conflict resolution.
Okay.
When you approach that dishwasher argument as a petty person, staring at your feet, your ego is entirely wrapped up in the dispute. You view your spouse as a direct adversary who is intentionally disrespecting you.
Right. They loaded the bowls wrong just to spite me.
Exactly. Your threat response is activated, your cortisol spikes, and the argument escalates because neither of you can see beyond the immediate perceived slight.
You're completely trapped in the micro.
Trapped. But if we try to study or fix our lives using these ingrained defensive habits, there is absolutely no room for resolution. The material makes a profound point about how wisdom operates. By adopting the massive perspective of a great person, by viewing the entire citizenry as your household, great wisdom naturally flows in.
What is the mechanism behind that wisdom flowing in, though? I mean, it sounds a bit abstract, like magic wisdom just appears.
No, it's not magic. The mechanism is psychological distancing and the reduction of ego.
Ah, okay.
When you elevate your mindset to care for the macro, when you are actively engaging with the heavy, complex problems of society as a social parent, your internal baseline shifts.
You gain perspective.
Exactly. You return home and see the dishwasher issue not as a profound personal insult, but as a minor logistical hiccup. But more importantly, you stop viewing your spouse as an adversary.
You look at them through the lens of a social parent.
Yes. You recognize that they are a tired, stressed individual who has been battling the same societal pressures and navigating the same complex human scaffolding that you have all day.
Oh, wow. So by zooming out, you actually access empathy.
Empathy and a cooler cognitive state. Your prefrontal cortex stays engaged. The argument dissolves not because you magically agree on how to load plates, but because the emotional weight attached to the argument just vanishes.
That makes so much sense.
The material states that the small things resolve themselves automatically when you operate with the energy of a great person. This is how that happens. You stop slamming doors because you realize the people behind those doors are just a small, struggling part of a much larger, interconnected ecosystem that you are ultimately responsible for nurturing.
That completely flips the script. I mean,
Right.
by letting go of your hyperfixation on your small family's immediate comfort and your own petty grievances and instead taking intellectual responsibility for the societal family, you actually become equipped to bring peace back to your biological household.
It's incredible, isn't it?
It is. You finally have the emotional bandwidth to create that space for consultation we talked about at the very beginning.
It is a really compelling paradox. The very act of taking on the burdens of the world is exactly what makes your domestic burdens light enough to carry.
Man, that is powerful. So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's just look at the incredible arc of this framework. We started with the incredibly stressful, door-slamming reality of the modern biological home.
The bracing breath.
The bracing breath, right? Then we explored the provocative idea that our individual success is actually built on the accumulated mass of global human effort. And because of that invisible scaffolding, our concept of family must extend far beyond our genetics.
We examine the necessity of becoming social parents.
Right.
Citizens who don't just complain, but actively research and untangle the messes in our communities.
Diagnosing the disease, not just the symptoms.
Exactly. And finally, we detailed the psychological mechanism of moving from a petty person trapped in a cycle of micro-conflicts to a great person who uses a macro perspective to naturally dissolve the friction in their own life.
So the next time you feel that familiar wave of stress washing over you as you put the key in your front door, or, the next time you feel completely alienated while walking through a crowded public space, remember the core provocation of this material.
It's a great reframe.
Your family might not just be the people waiting behind that door to argue with you. Your true family might actually be the people you are collaborating with, sharing ideas with, and struggling alongside out there in the world.
Which leads us with a critical question to examine as you go about the rest of your day.
What's that?
If this framework is accurate, if a true family is fundamentally defined not by blood, but by where you are able to have your most honest, constructive, and meaningful consultations, who is actually sitting at your family dinner table right now?